Welcome to Detonation Point. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill. I was with the U.S. Secret Service for 25 years and retired as the Deputy Special Agent in charge of the Cyber Operations part of the Criminal Investigative Division. In Detonation Point, I'm going inside the fight against cybercrime, hearing directly from defenders in government, infrastructure, and enterprise who are racing to stay ahead, because cybercrime isn't slowing down, and neither can we. Welcome to Detonation Point, presented by Elastio. Welcome back to Detonation Point, presented by Elastio. I am joined this week by Craig Taylor. Craig is a certified information security professional, CISSP, since 2001, a 30-year veteran in cybersecurity. Craig is also from New Hampshire, which, as listeners know, I spent 10 years out of Manchester working cases. So we might talk a little bit about the Granite State. So, Craig, thank you so much for joining us.
Matt, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I guess the first question is, why is the New Hampshire liquor stores on the highway so awesome? And I miss them very much.
Huh. Well, they have everything you need, right? On your trip to the White Mountains or on your trip to Portsmouth to the beaches, you can pick up whatever you need.
They are the best. Yeah, that is one of the things that when we go and drive up, and our daughter and producer of the podcast still lives in New Hampshire, so we'll go up and visit and stop by every single time. But what we really want to focus on today is cybersecurity awareness training and the human risk element. There used to be a cartoon that I used to use when I would give presentations, and it was a boxing ring. And on one side, it was basically all cybersecurity awareness training, every tool, everything on one side of the rink. The other side, it was just a big dopey guy named Dave. And it's basically like Dave wins every time. And so what I'd love to hear from you is, why are humans still the weakest link? And why are employees still the top target for cyber criminals?
It's a fundamental question in the cybersecurity industry today, and it has been for the last 25 years. As long as we've been seeing breaches in the news, we've been asking and scratching our heads, how does this happen, right? And you look back and you do a triage on every event, and you look and you say, oh my gosh, the humans in the loop here are causing the problems. It's them clicking. It's them not setting a proper password or reusing things. It's the human element that keeps biting us over and over again. Now, you asked the very important question, why is that? And I would argue that we aren't focused on outcomes. The outcomes of our training are failing us. There are many studies that show the way we teach phishing and the way we punish users for mistakes is leading to disengagement, alienation, shutting down and not participating in the training regimens that we have. Imagine you went to a doctor for cancer treatment and you asked, hey, what's the outcomes of your approach to treatment? And they said, well, 1.7% better. You would say, screw that, I'm not taking this treatment. I'm going to go find someone else. Or I'm just going to live my life out and suffer through this because I don't want the negative effects of cancer treatment if I only have a 1.7 better percent approach. And yet last year, Black Hat Conference, presentation from a 10,000 person healthcare provider measuring a control group with no training versus all the other typical modalities of phish training around fake emails to the inbox to see if people would click on them. And then when they click, they get forced into 30, 40, 50-minute videos on how to identify and avoid these phishing attacks. They had 2 or 3 different measurements that they came back, which are very striking. The first is that statistic. There was only a 1.7% difference from the control group who got nothing to all the other groups that had all the different modalities of typical fake email, gotcha, phish testing, which sent users these fake messages. If they clicked on them, they failed, they were assigned training. The second finding was that when you assign an end user, and let's talk about psychology. Think about this from a psychology perspective. That's my background, by the way, 30 years ago, psychology degree. When someone fails a phishing test, they immediately get told, you failed, go watch this video for 30 minutes to never do it again. There may even be public shame or a meeting with HR or their manager. But the reality is the mind space of that employee at that moment when they're told you failed, go watch this video, is not in a learning mode. And the study measured how long those individuals watched the video. And on average, the majority of users, this is a statistically significant amount, watch that video for 10 seconds, not 10 minutes on a 30-minute video, 10 seconds. Users are not in a frame of mind to learn when they fail the test. And let's be honest, the gotcha fish testing, which is the norm, thanks to Kevin Mitnick and KnowBe4 for the last 25 years, is measuring what people know. It is not a training methodology. It only serves to provide a statistic of here's our click rates, CEO. We've got them from 25% down to 20% or 15 or 10% or whatever the numbers are. It is not an educational paradigm. It's not a multidisciplinary approach. It's a shame and punishment approach with bigger and bigger sticks. And you might even know some banks and some financial institutions and other big organizations who can not afford people clicking on phishing links. They cannot be breached. They terminate employees after 3 failed phishing
Yeah.
tests. And that creates a culture where it's not okay to report something if you think it's a fish and you're wrong. Or if you see something, should you say something? Because you could be punished for it. It's the wrong approach. And that is absolutely foundationally why cyber literacy education is broken today. It's that
Do
simple.
they only listen for 10 seconds or watch for 10 seconds because they think that they already know it? Or is because the content is incredibly boring and it doesn't connect with them?
There may be 3 or 4 different reasons. If I put my psychology hat on, and I don't have the details of the study, but I would say if you've just failed something, let's put it in terms that everybody might know. I'm trying to decide whether parenting or dog training. Let's start with dog training. If you put a shock collar on your dog and you continually zap them when they don't come when they're called, do they come magically the 4th time you zap them? They
Right.
cower in a corner, afraid of being anything, doing
Mhm.
anything. They disengage. Parenting, if you have a child that has a temper tantrum, and you give them a swat on the butt and say, cut it out or I'll make you cry for real, right? I think my parents might have said that to me once upon a time. But
Yeah.
I'll give you something to cry about, right? It doesn't teach the child the good behaviors that help them cope with the next time they're in a stressful situation. When you think about these things and you say, okay, we just failed a phishing test, the mindset of an individual that failed a test is not open to learning, right? It's just not ready to listen yet. Maybe in a few hours or a few days, they would say, okay, I clicked, I made a mistake, let me go take the training. But in this study, they were measuring them immediately and it was a 10-second thing. So I can't tell you what all the reasons might be. All that I know is that it leads to disengaged, apathetic employees who, when you look at the outcomes, and they did, there's no change in behavior over the long run.
It's really interesting. I mean, like I've mentioned on the podcast a couple times, I've clicked on fish links. You know, sometimes when they come in at the right time from the right person, like I give an example, I was overseas at an event and I was talking to a CEO of a company and we had emailed each other a few times. And at dinner, he said, I'm going to send you something later tonight. And I'm like, great. Later that night, I get an email from him. I couldn't open it. I see him the next morning. I'm like, hey, I couldn't get your email open. And he's like, oh, I didn't send. And I said, what? He goes, yeah, somebody got into my email account and basically spammed everyone with a malicious link.
Yep.
I clicked on it. Like, I don't consider myself failing. I'm like, they win that one. Like, they got me and we move on. But you're right about that. You know, just even using the term failing is something that is a pejorative instead of more of a learning sort of instrument. So how do you change an organization's culture to become more cyber aware without having it be seen as punitive if you make a mistake?
That's the $10,000 question or whatever, the $64,000 question. The answer is look at multidisciplinary approaches. Think about the classroom environment where you're trying to build lifelong learners by rewarding a little bit of interest in a topic or a subject and helping them succeed by passing little quizzes and tests and rewarding their engagement for doing their assignments on time if you're thinking about young people in the classroom. Think about psychology. Psychology is known for 75 years. B.F. Skinner, the father of operant conditioning, stated, and I'm paraphrasing, rewarded behaviors are repeated. He never said, and this has been tested and proven, punished behaviors are extinguished. That doesn't work either. But rewarded behaviors are repeated. And you think about it from a psychology perspective, you've got 2 reasons people behave. Something internal to them, an intrinsic locus of control is the fancy words for, I believe this is the right thing to do because it's who I am. And an external locus of control, which is, I'm not going to speed when my Waze tells me there's a cop up ahead because I don't want to get a ticket, right? But
Yeah.
if you take away the punishment threat, how many people speed when Waze has no cops up ahead, right? They just blast along. These are fundamental psychology principles of the human condition. That's what I studied 30 years ago. And what we are seeing, if I may talk about my company for a moment, is when
Yeah.
you add positive reinforcement of good behaviors, they're repeated. The outcomes improve. The engagement, which is one of the fundamental challenges of cyber literacy education, go up. Now, are there companies, my product in my company, CyberHoot, where we do this positive reinforcement? There's no failing things. You have to retake the test. It's an open book. You look at the sender and we tell you, hey, this domain name might only be off by one letter. The fancy word for that is a typo squatted domain name, right? Where Microsoft is turned into RN Microsoft, right? That's what hackers are doing. The dirty little secret of fish testing and gotcha is that they can't even do that because the domain names are reported to Microsoft and the vendors get a cease and desist letter preventing them from doing any domain name anywhere near the vendor they're impersonating. That's the advantage for hackers, right? Because hackers do that. And that's what we're trying to teach in a browser environment where we don't have a spam report going back to the vendor because we impersonated RN Microsoft. We're teaching you without failing you in the moment what you need to know. And then we're rewarding you with gamification. There's multiple studies saying when you gamify something, it works. Let me ask you a question, Matt. Do you like working out at the gym?
No, clearly.
Okay. But do you like playing your favorite sport?
Very much so.
So the only difference, you're still exercising, you're still
Yeah.
getting fit. The difference is work and play. If you can make your educational exercises more play-like, people do them sometimes in a friendly competition with employees to get up on the leaderboard, to grow their avatar, to get their certificates of completion and their continuing education credits. Everything humanly possible, my company's tried to build into our platform to engage with those end users in a way that makes it play-like. When you finish an assignment, an explosion of confetti comes out, says, "Congratulations, you finished and you did well and you passed this educational exercise." That's how we're going to get different outcomes. What we're trying to measure is not compliance rates or click rates. We're trying to measure outcomes at the end of the day. People internalizing, hey, I'm not as stupid as I thought. I really can understand a typo squatted domain name, or why most of my emails that are phishing are urgent and emotional and tug at my heartstrings and make me panic and make me want to go click right away. We teach the PAR principle, PAR, pause, assess, report, right? Those things is building a culture within the companies where it's okay to be wrong if you report a fish that isn't a fish, but you're reporting it. Where it's okay to fail a phishing assignment because you're learning in the process of walking through what we have as a 6 or 7 step questionnaire, and it's a wizard driven thing. It gets harder over time. And if you don't pass it the first time, because you have to get 6 of the 7 or 5 of the 6 right, you get to retake it immediately. The phishing simulator in a browser, and we walk you through the sender, the subject, the greeting, the spelling, language quality, links, attachments, urgency, and emotionality. All of those things are building a rubric in the end users. And we see more and more companies getting to close to 100% compliance and participation by end users. Is it perfect? Hell no. But it's a lot better than the disengagement we see on punishment and shame approaches.
How do you feel about people's behavior at work on work emails as opposed to personal emails? Do you find that the mistakes that they make at work are the same at home, or are they more conscious at work and then guards down left at home, and that's an attack vector? Because I always wonder about sort of that aspect. Like when I was with the government, I would always be extraordinarily mindful of emails that came in to my work email. But if I'm checking a Gmail account or something like that, I'm much less concerned because the perception is, well, what's the worst that's going to happen or something like that. But I would imagine good principles at work lead to good principles at home. Is that a fair assessment? Okay.
And look, what we're trying to build is muscle memory. Our Hootfish exercise is this in the browser phishing simulation that you go through and you answer 6 or 7 questions in a rapid succession. People do it in 15 seconds when they learn the rubric. When you're getting from a 1-minute exercise down to 15 seconds and you're looking at sender, subject, greeting, spelling, language quality, emergency, links, attachments, and you go through that rubric and you practice it, you become almost reactionary to your emails where you don't do anything until you go through the list. And if there's any kind of moment, you slow down and you assess a little deeper. That becomes muscle memory. And I'll be honest with you, you know, New Hampshire, I was stopped on the streets of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, because the city used our product for about 8 years. And a woman says to me, "You're CyberHoot Craig." I said, "How'd you know?" "Well, I saw your picture on your blog." I got a phishing email in my personal inbox the other day, and I just done your hoot fish, and I spotted it. I knew, I was confident this is a fish, and I would have probably 2 weeks ago clicked on it, but I didn't. And she was talking about her personal email. So these things translate, and we always push the fact that don't look at this as a work obligation. Look at it as like almost a benefit of your company enrolling you in something that's positive and rewarding that benefits you not just professionally but
Yeah.
personally too, because everybody uses a computer to run their lives today at home and in the office. So I think they translate very easily. And if you can get to that muscle memory status, I think you're golden for the world we live in today.
How difficult is it for individuals to spot more complex sort of typo squatting where it would be like changing a letter to a Cyrillic letter or something like that? Do you see that much? And if so, is it just, again, taking the extra time and looking, or is that something that maybe, technology should be covering as well, where it's not nearly as perceptible to the human eye?
So I have three thoughts to that. First, I haven't seen that a lot, but I worry about it, right? When you take a Cyrillic A and you replace it with a normal A, it's almost indistinguishable in the written language. So I think number two, technology needs to look for that and say, look, we're going to strip everything out. And if it's anything but Ebsidic dictionary, we're not going to use it, or like the normal alphabet. So there's the technology should be weeding some of that stuff out. It should be alerting some red flags. And yes, I think users would be very susceptible to that because it's really difficult to tell the difference. If it was just the sender, then you would be probably sunk, right? The same reason you clicked on that one email from a legitimate domain name, from a legitimate contact, from a expected email, there's no reason to think you would have done a whole bunch of extra scrutiny on that link. Although with muscle memory, why would my friend from this conference send me a link to this domain? It doesn't make
Hmm.
any sense. So there are other hallmarks. And so as you go through and you look, well, the domain name looks perfect, but it's asking me to do something weird. Like, why would I want to click on a link or go to this site or do this or open a document that presents me for credentials? Like, all of a sudden, all the hairs on my neck stand up, and I'm like, I'm going to call that guy because I got his contact. I'm going to phone him and say, what is this? What's the meaning of this? It doesn't feel right here. So we always recommend assessing, following the entire rubric. There are other keys that might tip you off. One, let's be clear about something. AI is taking all the grammatical mistakes out,
Yeah.
but it's not taking the cultural mistakes out, right? If your hacker is from a foreign country and they send you something that's grammatically correct, this word order might still be off for your culture and your local, experience of how things are said. So there are still even those kinds of things that AI can't fix or hasn't been able to fix yet. Be aware of those things. But you're right, those Cyrillic letters could be a real challenge. And I haven't seen a lot of it. I've read about the use. I
Hmm.
think it's reserved for the people that you help protect for a lot of your profession was,
Yeah.
persons of interest, high quality targets who get very special attacks.
Yeah, like the whale fishing, spear fishing kind
Hmm.
of stuff. The other thing that always concerns me is social engineering attacks and how do you
Hmm.
defend against them? Do you find that most people are not really as aware as they should be about the information about them that's available and how that can be used against them? And how do you defend against it?
Well, we try to put that into our video trainings, right? It's hard to put into a phishing exercise because we have to do generic phishing simulations that teach the rubrics, right? But in our videos at CyberHoot, my company, we talk about all the different ways social engineering is done. The primary is still phishing, but there's vishing, smishing, quishing. That's over the phone. It's over a text message. I'm sure you and every other human listening to this
Yeah.
has their unpaid toll violation to go click on from an SMS text. And then there's QR codes, right? If you go down to Boston or Portsmouth, you scan that QR code to pay for parking. You better make sure it's not a sticker put on the
Mhm.
parking meter. So those things happen. But social engineering happens in so many different ways, and ultimately the outcome is somebody making money off of you. So always be aware, or somebody stealing your identity, your credentials, or information they shouldn't. A lot of times there's pretexting at companies you're targeting as a hacker is to call a few people, impersonate some leadership people to seek out information about what's going on, what projects are happening, reviewing social media, combining it all then to feed into an AI engine and send 10 very interesting clickable emails to persons of interest at that company. It's happening more and more and more. And we're not even getting to deep fakes and phone calls that sound like the CEO, look like the CEO, but isn't the CEO.
And with those, would you say that it's more institutional controls are there that fail safe? Whether
Well,
it's whether it's dual controls, whether it's following up with a trusted communication channel, things like that. Because one of the things that I've seen a fair amount, I'm sure you have as well, is if a hacker gets into an organization and they get into the Active Directory and they take the thumbnails and then they will go on WhatsApp or something like that and use those thumbnail photos and say, oh, hey, this is Craig, my email's down, can you please do this? And then you're not expecting it, but I'm like, I've seen that picture every day for the last 10 years. That's Craig. I'm going to do what they say.
Yeah, and the answer is so much easier than the multitude of ways people can get you to do a wire transfer to the hackers, right? There are so many different ways that these wire frauds are happening, SMS or out of band communications. The simplest and best rule is to always have out of band confirmation for financial transactions. Have a safe word. Remember back 20 years, you look too young for that, but I'm old enough to remember we had passcode cards in our wallet, and as you did a transaction, you crossed out the last passcode as an approval authorization for some high value transaction. We need a safe word for financial transactions. So if you get a call from the CEO and he's on vacation, I need you to wire for that project we had, and the vendor has said yes, and we need to pay for it, or else we lose the benefit at the end of the quarter, March 30th, and we have to pay today because otherwise it goes up in price. Sure. What's our financial safe word? Or I can call you back on your cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
Two very simple steps. One of those is going to sort out the problem, right? Doing one or the other or having both in place. The same is true for families, by the way, Matt. I was just invited to a security conference by Gartner in Sao Paulo, and my alarm bells went off like, Sao Paulo, okay. If anybody knows I'm going, I could be a kidnapping threat, right? So someone might call my wife while I'm away and say, hey, we've kidnapped Craig. You need to pay this ransom. So my wife would say, well, what's our family safe word? You can have a family safe word to prevent these things from happening if they're there. If I was kidnapped, I would probably give it up, right? But if I'm not, it's just a ruse. So the more and more that criminals find ways to attack us, we just have to do some very simple things like a family safe word or a financial safe word or a callback on another out of band number just to verify things. Look, I make 1 or 2 phone calls a week to people who email me that I know where I think their email's been compromised and they're asking me to do something, or I'm telling them, hey, I think your email's been compromised. Oh, yeah, don't click on anything. Or, do you really mean to send this to me? Because it seems out of the ordinary. And yeah, you remember we talked at that last security conference? I finally followed up with you, and here's the link to the white paper I wanted you to download. Oh, okay, yeah, I remember that. Okay, it's so much easier to be right and double check things than to be wrong and have a world of, compromised email accounts the worst.
Well, yeah, no doubt. I'm a big proponent of safe words now. I never had any high value transactions back in the day, so I don't really have to worry about that. But we're in the same boat with whether it's a family safe word or whatnot. But it even goes back to when I was in law enforcement. I was in New Haven, and when I started my career in the New York field office, whenever we would do arrests with an undercover, the undercover would say a specific word for us to everyone to go in and make the arrest, and it was Acapulco, because it was a word that you don't say during regular conversations. And it was something that everyone could hear. If you're listening on, your headsets, Acapulco is a word. So there was a time where they arrested a guy for counterfeit, and the undercover would say, oh man, with all this money, I'm going to go to Acapulco, and everybody comes in. And that's what you would do. For years, people would use that same word. Well, the story goes that somebody got arrested and it's 4 months later, he's out back on the street selling counterfeit again or credit cards or whatnot. And then the undercover says, oh, I'm going to go to Acapulco. And the bad guy's like, oh, he puts his hands up because Acapulco, I know where this is going. And so because he knew the word, because it was such a, it was a word that mattered to him so much. But you're right, especially in today's world with deep fakes and things like that, having something that you can go back to that only people inside your family know, that's not something that's on social media or whatnot. You know, we have such a high degree of self-disclosure. We tell everybody everything. Just having that one thing that they can't get, kind of like an out-of-wallet or knowledge-based authentication question, but for your family. One of the things that I work a lot with small, mid-sized businesses, and I'm sure you do as well. My concern for them is a lot different than the big organizations that have big infrastructure and things like that. So from your perspective, what are the biggest cybersecurity blind spots for small, mid-sized businesses globally?
I would say this, small, mid-sized businesses probably, I'm pushing them and I'm cajoling them and I am impressing upon them the importance of good password hygiene. And when I say that, look, I'm in the middle of another breach with another company this week because their VPN wasn't MFA'd. And what the reality of the situation is, their users weren't on a password manager. And so you go to the dark web, you look up all the exposed accounts from different websites that these users, based on the domain name, are part of. And sure enough, they're still on the VPN, right? Like that is a critical gap. And if you go to the NIST standard and say, where does it say password manager adoption? It doesn't. It says have unique, long and strong passwords wherever you go, wherever your users go. But the reality in the world is this is again, looking at outcomes. Think about outcomes. The only way for a human to have 100 or more accounts, or even 10 accounts or more with unique 15-character randomly generated passwords is to have them in a password manager that sticks them into the VPN or the website or the login. When it's time to get into a system, a password manager is the only way to do it. So when I go to a small or medium-sized business and I say, have you funded a password manager for your company? And they say no. I say, oh, damn it. Okay, do you have MFA everywhere you go on all the critical accounts? Yes. Okay, show me where the exceptions are. What do you mean? Well, I'm sure there's 4 C-suite that have called in to the help desk and said, I can't get in today. Take my MFA off. And so they're exempt. And then you're using passwords. That's the way in. That's this breach today. There was a breach 2 weeks ago. There was a breach at the beginning of January. I'm one person. I deal with 50, 60, 70 companies a year, and I have 5 or 6 breaches. It's everywhere, all the time. If you don't do these fundamentally simple things, learn a password manager for the love of God. You will hate me for the first 2 weeks. You'll say, Craig, you suck. Why did you make me do this nasty, mean, unintuitive password manager stuff? It's frustrating. In another 2 weeks, you'll say, I kind of like it now, but I still don't like you. In 2 weeks, you'll go, oh my God, I can't survive without this thing. How did I try to reset passwords 5 times a week and forget passwords and then struggle and sweat it out and have my piece of paper somewhere in my wallet that I pulled out from my favorite 5 passwords? It just was ludicrous compared to the beauty and simplicity of a password manager. People love it after a while. I did it with a Rotarian. I'm in a Rotary at Portsmouth and had to see him for 3 weeks in a row. And he scowled at me across the room because we meet weekly for lunch. And then the next week he's kind of smiling, but he's still giving me the evil eye. And the third week comes up and he says, you haven't sat with me. And I go, I know, because it's too early. If I sat with you at lunch, you would be lambasting me for making you do this. He was about 65. He'd owned a business for 30 years and he was forcing himself to learn a password manager. And he comes up and he hugs me. He goes, Craig, I can't believe I tried to do this without a password manager all these years. It's the single best thing you can do for password hygiene. And in the advent of the future world where we're going passwordless with pass keys, and I don't think we have time to get into all of that, but pass keys are a cryptographic hash between your computer and your identity and the website. And if it's stolen, it works nowhere else. It's like a key that cannot be reproduced. And that can be held and managed in a password manager so that it's cared for. It's stored safely and securely, and there's no way to steal it, even though it's in a password manager. Even if it was stolen from somewhere else, it cannot be reused. So these things are really helpful. You know, I'm human, and I'll embarrass myself and say, I came back from vacation probably a decade ago, 150 emails in my inbox, massively going through delete, 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 delete. Oh, wait a minute. Here's a LinkedIn recommendation from a long lost friend. Oh my God, let me click on that because I haven't heard from him for so long. Why did he write me a recommendation? I'd love to see what he thinks of me. Click it. LinkedIn page pops up on my browser. Beautiful, LinkedIn, and the login screen is blank. I'm like, refresh. What the hell? Am I logged into my password manager? I am. Is it broken? Shoot. I'm right back from vacation. If my password manager is broken, I'm doomed. And then I'll look at the URL. It's .it is the domain name.
Mm-hmm.
Something.it. Might have had LinkedIn in it too. But IT is Italy for a
Mm-hmm.
country domain. I had clicked on a phishing link. I'm human. I make a mistake. But you know
Yep.
what saved me? My password manager. Because if I had known my password in my urgency of looking at what he said about me, I would have typed it
Yep.
in and
Yep.
given it to the hacker. But a password manager won't do that because it knows the difference between a typo squatted domain with a Cyrillic
Yep.
letter or not and the real one. And it'll say, I don't know where you are, Craig. I can't help you here. Sorry. So it's a fail safe on some of the things that we might accidentally do. And I'm not perfect. I'm human. I had an emotional attachment to that email that I
Mm-hmm.
clicked on, which is what hackers do more and more these days. A password manager might save you. Hopefully
Yeah.
that helps.
So last question, and you brought up the NIST cybersecurity framework, the conflation of compliance versus security and why meeting standards doesn't mean you're secure. I used to deal with it a lot when I was up in New Hampshire, and we would talk to a victim merchant and they'd say, oh, well, I thought I was PCI compliant. I don't know how this could possibly have happened. Can you kind of walk through the listeners, the difference and why being necessarily compliant doesn't mean you're secure from your perspective?
Sure. Let me put it into human terms, okay? Matt, pretend I'm your doctor. Hey, Matt, it's your annual checkup. Do you smoke? You probably
No.
don't, right? No, you
No.
don't smoke. Great, great. That's awesome. Do you drink?
Well, I mentioned the New Hampshire liquor store, so yes.
How many drinks a week would you say you have?
Enough for an Irishman.
One or two, right? One or two or
Yeah,
three.
yeah,
Well, that's the checkbox exercise that says you're a healthy guy, right? You only have one or
yeah.
two or three drinks a week. Liar.
Huh?
I'm sorry, I don't
Right.
mean to call you out on that. But people lie on their checkbox exercise. They lie on their compliance. They get their compliance by sending out their phishing tests and sending out their videos and saying, well, we got to 80%. That's good enough, right? Or they're not even doing it, right? Your cyber insurance form, you do awareness training and phish testing. Yep, we do that. Well, we're going to do it, so we might as well mark it because we don't want to pay extra. It's a checkbox exercise that doesn't work. And then even if you are compliant to that exercise, you're using methodologies that don't change behaviors, that don't work. Here's a kind of a critical insight map. When we've deployed CyberHoot to companies, the C-suite, the high-level executives are always dead last. They don't do their
Hmm.
training because they're too busy, or they write up, my secretary does my email for me. I don't have to worry about it. The reality is we added this really cool feature recently to our platform of leaderboards, anonymous leaderboards. So when you log in, you do even one training. It says, congratulations, Matt, you are dead last on the leaderboard for your company. And that little competitive spirit that goes into most C-suite who are competitive in every other aspect of their lives kicks in. And they say, I can't be dead last. I'm going to start doing my training. And they start to climb the leaderboard because they get caught up. The reality is you got to consider the human condition and make it appealing and gamified, right? Playing the sport of cyber education, not working cyber education. And you're going to get better outcomes all along the way. It's really that simple. So the checkbox exercises done wrong, even done right, is not enough. It's not going to work if you have a culture of negativity and punishment and shame, and you can't report things because people will call you out for, you just called out an email from the CEO that was legitimate, you dumbass. Why would you do
Right.
that? Because I wasn't sure and I didn't want to make a mistake, and I thought it was out of context and out of the ordinary for me, little old me, to get an email from the CEO. So I reported it instead of, hey, nice job reporting that. It actually was legit, but it was out of ordinary, and that's what we want you to do. Good job. In fact, we're going to publicly recognize you for doing what no one else did because they got the same email. And rewarding these things with positive recognition and public displays of calling it out, that's going to make a huge difference in the culture and ultimately in the outcomes of your employees.
That reminds me of a time talking about professionally challenging folks. When I was with the Secret Service in New Hampshire, I was doing an event, actually coincidentally for I think it was the Rotary Club of Portsmouth at one of the big hotels in Portsmouth for a protectee. This was 2015, 2016. And I spent 5 days at that hotel, and I was walking around the back house of the hotel for 5 straight days in a suit with a couple other people, and no one ever stopped me once. I had no business being there but nobody told the employees, hey, we have Secret Service coming in. And so at one point I stopped somebody and I said, hey, listen, I've seen you for 4 days. You've never once asked why I'm back here near your servers. And they basically said, oh, you're in a suit. I thought you were from corporate and we're told to mind our business. So I met with the GM and I said, when you're standing post for the Secret Service or a protective event, you're told to professionally challenge somebody. So basically say, hey, I'm sorry, I don't recognize you. Do you have your PIN? Why are you here? That kind of thing. Creating that culture where you are rewarded instead of being punished. If that person said, hey, I'm so sorry, I should know who you are. Can you kind of tell me why? And it dawned on the GM. I'm like, this is where bad things can happen, because I think a lot of times people overlook the risks of a human going in as opposed to, the cyber hacker in the sweatshirt, in mom's basement, the stereotypes. They don't realize that quite often it could just be a human being. And trying to create that sort of culture of professionally challenging from the low, you don't even call it the lowest level. Everybody's on the same team, from employee 500 to employee number 1. And to your point, it seems quite often that the ones that are least cognizant of compliance and standards are the ones at the very top because of the inconvenience. So Craig, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. Can you tell the listeners where we can find you and CyberHoot?
Yeah, so if anyone wants to learn more, you can go to cyberhoot.com. You could email sales@cyberhoot.com to have a quick demo if you'd like, or get some information. We have a white paper on our homepage that explains the psychology and the educational science of our multidisciplinary approach that focuses on outcomes. So that's a great read. It goes through the reasons we've been doing it wrong and how they compare to doing it right for outcomes. And then if anybody needs anything else, you know what we can do? We can give you a 20% discount for a year if you put Detonation Point as the referral code when you sign up for a free trial. And we'll give you 20% off for a year. Absolutely no problem at all. Detonation Point, because we love to support the folks that bring us on to talk about this really important thing where cybersecurity has kind of misdirected itself for a little while. We need to move it from punishment to rewards.
Wonderful. And we'll also put it into the show notes as well, so people can grab the link and all that stuff. So Craig, thank you once again. Really appreciate it. Your weather's about to get nice, hopefully soon up there, and hopefully you'll be out enjoying it in no time.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thanks, Matt. Really appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you for all the listeners for listening to this week's episode of Detonation Point presented by Elastio. We'll see you next week. Thank you.